You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hey fam, it's a new month and Black to Business has some news to share with you. We are going on a tour. That's right, we'll be outside this summer and fall all because of you. We've heard what you had to say and we've read what you wanted, and now we are here to deliver. We're bringing back our panel series, Black Men Who Lead, and this year's theme is the DNA of a Black businessman. We're exploring the anatomy of Black men in business and what characteristics lead to a thriving leader in 2023 and beyond. To learn more about where and when, follow us on all social media accounts and fill out the link in the show notes entitled Black Men Who Lead Update List. Now back into the episode. Hey there and welcome back to the Black to Business Podcast. I am so happy that you are here, that you are showing up for yourself, and that you are having Black to Business be a part of your entrepreneurial journey. We appreciate you so much and we are so proud of you. Now, let's dive into what today's topic is going to be about. So this is another solo episode, and I'm going to share with you some tips on how to avoid falling on your face when you're starting your business. Now, I have to think because I still announced the fact that this is going to be a solo episode, and it reminds me of the conversation I was having recently with Jamora, my Chief of Growth and Innovation at Black to Business, and we were planning out what the episode should be about, what I should talk about, like how long they should be, and we were like, you know how when you go to church and they announce that the guest pastor is going to show up, and it's like, if the guest pastor is not popping, you not showing up. And it's like, I can skip that Sunday. So we have to make sure that I'm like the guest pastor, that you are enjoying me and that I'm bringing this content. So you are going to be showing up every week, especially for this month, because it will be solo episodes. So that just made me think about that. But anywho, so I'm going to share with you a few tips on how to avoid falling on your face when you're starting your business. And I'm going to share 6 tips. Now, there are so many things that you should think about when you're first starting your business, things that you should avoid doing. And of course, I'll cover a lot of those in the future. But these are some of the things that I think most people don't think about when they're starting a business, and they should be thinking about. So this is what these tips are based on. First things first is I cannot stress enough the importance of getting your house in order. So that's the first tip. Get your house in order. And when I say get your house in order, there are a couple of things. So first things first is you want to get your systems in order. If you're new here, I am a systems girl. If you're not, you know I talk about it all the time. So I'm big on systems and I'm big on organization because I believe it really does save you a lot of headache in the future or just on a day-to-day. So you want to first make sure that you get your systems in order. And that looks like also keeping important documents and creating a dedicated space for where you're going to keep your physical documents as well as your digital documents. So I'm old school. I have a filing cabinet. Like I'm really old school about that. Like some people have, they keep their things in folders, maybe under their bed or in their office. Like I have a filing cabinet. So important documents are kept there, has a lock on it, all of those things. So that's when it comes to the physical documents. Now, when it comes to the digital documents, have a dedicated space where, especially if it's important or private information, you want to make sure that it's some space that it could be, not encrypted or whatever all those things are. I use Dropbox because they do have where you can have a vault where you actually have to have a password to access those documents. So we use Dropbox, as well as other documents are hosted in Google Drive. So those are the things that you want to think about, is where you can keep important documents and upload them. I know that there are a lot of software that's out now, but that's just what I use. In addition to that, I print lots of times those documents as well and put those in my filing cabinet. So getting your systems in order, having a space for important documents. And then you want to also get your systems in order, or get your house in order by understanding your customer journey. Like that's important. So when someone first comes on your website, like what does that look like? What are you having them do? And how are you taking them from learning about your business to actually purchasing and what happens after they purchase. So you want to have all that stuff mapped out. And that's important because you don't want to be confused. Neither do you want your customer to be confused on where they should be going. So having those things top of mind is really important. And then it's also important if you choose to when you bring someone on board. In addition to that, I'm going to reference the episode that is a great resource in addition to what I'm saying. And one of my favorite episodes actually was episode number 133. It's called Getting Your Business Back in Order with Miss Bianca Johnson. That was a really good episode to reference when it comes to systems, back end, and all of those things. Other things that fall under the umbrella of getting your house in order is you want to get your finances in order, especially if you are considering leaping into your business full time. So savings, if you listen to last week's episode, I really talked about, financial plans. So you want to have your savings in place, really get good with budgeting and creating that escape plan. Like, I know it's a lot of grunt work to write these things down, but trust me, it will save you a lot of headaches in the long run. Our reference episode I have two is episode 91, Planning Your Financial Future with Robert Fortune, and also episode 77, Profiting First in Your Business with Miss Octavia Connor, who is also a certified accountant. So those are some things that you can reference to help you get your finances in order. Tip number 2, you want to unplug and do the work. Now, I cannot express how beneficial this has been to me enough because I'm already a person that likes to go in the zone, do a lot of deep work, but it really does help, especially when you're first starting out, because that's when you're most creative, like you're really hype about this idea that you have. And I think that a lot of times when you get distracted by who's doing this, who's doing that, it waters down the vision that you have. It waters down the creativity. So I really recommend unplugging and do the work. So you want to dedicate time to strategize. Like recently, my mentor we were talking about this, like you have to have time to strategize. And that means that maybe you take a week or a few days off, but putting that time on your calendar, really using your calendar. So unplugging the work also looks like creating more than you consume. I spoke about on my year-end review, and I've spoke about this a couple of times. I'm really big on unplugging because I've seen what it can do. So, for example, I talk about the success that we've had with the podcast and the recognition that we've had. I've seen it work. And one of the things that I did was almost a year I created more than I consumed, meaning I didn't listen to other people's podcasts. I just focused on bettering what I was doing. And that's when we got recognition. That's when, opportunities came for the business through the podcast. And I think that me just focusing on creating, I know that really helped. And also, I am a big reader. I spoke about this on the last episode as well. I'm a big reader. I've always been a big reader. Even in school, I would always win the accelerated reader competitions. Almost every year was me and this other guy, but for the most reading. And being an avid reader, so that year, I didn't read. I didn't read any books, but I wasn't consuming anything because I was just like, I want to do the work. And it makes me think about those people, how they know a lot of things and you ask them, what have you actually done? Or not rudely asking them what they done, but, you look at it and like, okay, what has this person really accomplished? And you look and it's like nothing. They know a lot of stuff, but the problem is they are not implementing a lot of the things that they know. And they're just so focused on consuming. And you don't want to be that person. So you have to actually unplug, not consume, put in the work to do what you've learned. And I also think about my mom. She had a lot of sayings, I'm sure, people who have all these sayings all the time. Like, they're just people who have something for everything. And we had this thing where we were growing up. She would always say, they got theirs. Anytime we were looking at TV for a long time or something, looking at this successful person, and we were like, dang, we can't do nothing. But it was not to say you couldn't be inspired by that person, but it's just don't obsess, because you also need to be focusing on doing what you need to do. So she always had this thing like they got theirs. And sometimes I tell her that when she sends me these TikTok videos all the time. So I'm like, remember, they got theirs. Why are you on TikTok all the time? But that's neither here nor there. So unplug and actually do the work, because you do not want to be that person that's always consuming and you have nothing to show for the things that you've learned. And trust me, your business will appreciate it. Tip number 3 is find a mentor and find your community, meaning find your support system. So it's important to find mentors and people who understand you, but also to find your tribe, especially when it comes to business, because it's so important to be surrounded by like-minded people, whether it be just for support, but then also encouragement or bouncing ideas for creativity. Like, I see this is working in your business. Like, what are some of the things that you're doing? Because I'm struggling in this area. So having people that you trust, have your best interests at heart, to confide in when it comes to business is so important. One of the things I think about also is I know that there are people who are not in major cities where they have access to networking events and things like that. Really look into using online spaces to find your tribe. So it doesn't always mean that that person has to be in person. And another tip that I always give when it comes to mentorship is I'm really big on sometimes your mentors might not know that you exist, meaning find an expert in your industry or someone who's doing well in your industry and look at the things that they're doing and have them be your mentor. And what I've done is I might not have one-on-one access with that person, but I've joined their communities where they do offer their time. So I have invested in, maybe they're not my personal coach, but if they have a program and I love the way that they're doing business, I feel like they're a mentor to me. So I joined their communities to kind of have that access to them. But then also you find like-minded people. And recently I had someone come to my event and they follow me on Instagram and they follow like this person that I really look up to. And I'm like, many people don't know about this person. So they follow this person and they follow me. So I remember I followed up with them, but I said to them, obviously there's some things that we have in common because a lot of people don't know about this person that I follow. And it's good to see people that are in that community as well. So I said, hey, let's connect. And we were just chatting it up. And so instant connection because of there was a person they followed that I followed. And there was that like-mindedness there, obviously. So you might find your people that way. And it's a great opportunity to connect with other people who you might not have known existed. So finding your tribe is really important. Also, when it comes to mentorship in a community, I want to stress the importance of not having too many mentors. So I've spoken about the fact that I have about 2 to 3 people that I look up to, and then I have as my mentor. So when it comes to online spaces, people I follow, it's like 2 people that everybody know. I'm always mentioning their name. And those are my people. So I don't feel like I get overwhelmed. And I think that's the reason why. Like I keep a minimal or how many people I'm following for certain things. And I just stick to them. And if it's somebody else that I have not noticed, I'll just follow them over time. Or if a couple of people mention them, I'm like, okay, I should check out this person. And sometimes I find, okay, this person is a good person to follow. Or sometimes I find this person is really not my person. And that's okay. They do great work, but they're just not something or someone that I connect with. So you don't want to have too many people that you're following or that you are looking to be your mentors, because that is where confusion could come in. You might be doing some task that this mentor gave you that might not be in alignment with what this mentor gave you. So really being intentional when you are finding your mentors and also your communities and overall your support system. And of course, I want to reference one of the episodes as a resource, episode number 87, The Importance and Value of Mentorship in Business with Miss Kalila Webster, who has also become like my mentor. She is so amazing, her and her husband. So that is a great episode if you are looking to learn more about how to find a mentor, and what are some of the things to look for. Also, I want to mention when it comes to finding your support system, one of the things that has really helped me is sometimes when I find that I'm getting into a space where there's just so much information online or overload in general, what I'll do is I join like 2 communities, and I'll go into those communities and just look at some of those people who are maybe in a situation that I'm in or have come out of a situation that I'm facing. And I say, okay, this doesn't last forever, but then it also allows me to recharge and refocus. So I go into those communities. I'm really intentional about the types of communities that I join. So when I go in there, I know I'm not wasting my time. So I come out recharged. So that's why it's important to not have too many communities. But when you do have those communities, be intentional and, have a reason why you're going in there. Are you a Black man leading in business or community? Or do you know a Black man leading in business or community? If so, we would love to consider featuring you or someone you know in our annual Black Men Who Lead series, where we highlight Black men leading in business and community each June. All you have to do is fill out the nomination form located in the show notes. And if you or someone you know is chosen, they will be featured on our annual list. Now back into the episode. Tip number 4 is do not obsess over the numbers. Now, I want to say, excluding revenue, of course, and profit, of course, I want to really stress that numbers don't matter as much as you think they do. Results and impact does. So perfect example is with the podcast. We have a huge numbers, like it's growing. However, when we were getting, recognition for certain things, or PR people were reaching out to us to be on our podcast, we did not have the biggest numbers. And I speak about this. We don't have some of the top numbers that a lot of podcasters do, but we've been able to reach that success because we are very niche specific. So like they say, there are riches in the niches. So I know that numbers, when it comes to those vanity metrics, when you're looking at like social media and a lot of things that these online places are telling you that you should obsess over, they don't matter as much as you think they do. They matter, but not as much as you think they do. So I don't want you to obsess over, I'm not hitting this amount of numbers, so these people won't talk to me. You won't know unless you try, and you'll be surprised how many people will say yes, because the results and the impact that you've been able to make is what they're looking for. And then oftentimes I think about some of these companies who are so successful, and then I go look at, their social media following, and they're not on social media. Not to say social media is important. I'm just saying that, again, it doesn't matter as much as you think, because their focus might be somewhere else where they can gauge what type of impact they need to make. So, for example, somebody might not be focusing on social media as heavy, but they're focusing on ads. So those are the things that you want to think about, is who are those people who are giving you that money, that opportunity, those customers, where are they looking? Oftentimes, it's not social media. So sometimes you want to think about what numbers you're actually looking at, and those vanity metrics are not as important as you think. So that's what I want to stress when it comes to obsessing over the numbers. Like, don't obsess over these vanity metrics. Obsess over the impact and the results that you're making, because all of your clients are not on social media. I've had mentors who told me, like, this type of client that you're looking for, they're not on Instagram. They might be on LinkedIn. They might be on email. They might be on cold calling. So you want to really find out where the people who matter are, and you want to meet them where they're at. So numbers do not matter as much as you think. And then leading into that is tip number 5 is you want to measure your performance. So this goes into those numbers that do matter. You measure your performance. So document and track your KPIs. I'm so glad that this is something that I do. And I knew it was important, but recently I really realized how important it was on a scale of, I was applying for something and I had my mentor. I was like, I don't think we have the numbers in this way that they're looking for. And they were like, okay, do you have this number? Do you have that number? And we were just looking at some of the things that I've been tracking for years. And that was enough. So you want to look at what KPI, key performance indicators, that you should be tracking and really start to track. If you are not doing it, pull up a Google Doc or Excel spreadsheet, not a Google Doc, but a Google Sheet or Excel spreadsheet, and start to map out what numbers you need to be tracking. So if your customers are on social media, or the person who's writing the check is looking at social media, you want to map out, okay, let me have a column for Twitter. Let me have a column for Instagram. Let me have a column for TikTok, Pinterest, or whatever social media. And then you want to track that from, if they're looking at day to day or week to week. Like personally, we track from week to week. So you also want to look at social media, but in addition to that, you want to look at your email list. So figure out what things you should be tracking. Also revenue, also your website performance. Which pages on your website are people going to and clicking on? And how long are they staying on your website? So these are things that you certainly want to track, because if you go apply for certain things, they may ask for particular numbers. So it's important to do that. In addition to that is you want to track your success. So getting testimonials. I actually recently did this at an event. I held a workshop here in Brooklyn on podcasting. And so afterwards, I just pulled out my phone and I had the backdrop and I was like, how did you like this workshop? And so I posted it on social media. And, getting those real-time testimonials is so important because, of course, getting their permission to say, you can put this in your emails, you can put this on your website is important. If I have an upcoming workshop, I have that proof, like, this is what I've been able to do. So get those testimonials, have a place where you store that information, and also understanding the importance of content matters, because you might not use it today, but in the future you'll have it. So measuring your performance when it comes to tracking your success is looking at those testimonials and understanding the importance of content. In addition to that, you want to pivot when necessarily, but I want to say this and say you don't want to do so too quickly. So you want to make sure that you have properly tested what does and doesn't work, and then make adjustments based on that, because you always want to keep in mind that things take time and you want to give it the proper amount of times. I know we live in a time where there's like this microwave success, but things do take time to test them. So when you begin to measure those KPIs, like really look closely at, okay, how is this really doing over a couple of weeks or a couple of months? And is this something that I need to continue to offer in my business? So that's where tracking those KPI comes in, because it allows you to think, okay, where can I pivot? And another thing you want to think about is the fact that just because you have to pivot in that it might not work right now, that doesn't mean it won't work in the future. So you can always bring something back. It just might mean that you don't have the capacity or the resources to do it right now, or it could simply mean it just doesn't work. So measure your performance is important. And lastly, you want to really focus on what you own. So you don't want to build a business that you don't have control over, meaning you don't want to build a business on renting land. This is really geared towards people who build a business on social media. We've seen where social media has gone down. What happens to your business if social media goes down? So you want to really think about, okay, what are the tools that I can use in my business to make sure that if anything happens, I own these things. You can, of course, use social media as a medium or as a tool, but think about those things that you own. So, for example, I'm really intentional about focusing on our newsletter because, of course, newsletter is something that we own. Website is something that we own. So getting people back to the website, getting people to hop on our newsletter, that's my ultimate goal. And I use social media as a tool to do so. In addition to that, I really focus on podcasting because podcasting is something that you own. Like nobody is taking that away. And it's not regulated. Podcast is not government regulated, meaning that if you put something on YouTube, you put something on social media, like they can take it down. On podcast, That's not happening. You own it. So you can, there's the freedom of speech aspect of it. So those are the things that you want to think about is you don't want anyone having control over what you can and cannot do in your business. So what platforms are you using in your business that you own? Think about that. You want to focus on what you own. It's okay to focus on things that you don't own, but you always know that these are tools, not things that you own, because any moment they could go down. So if you're not focusing on your website, make sure that you are. If you're not focusing on your email list, make sure that you begin to do that, or really just mention it a lot more than you probably do. So podcasting is something that I'm really passionate about doing, but I also know that it's something that I own. So that's the reason why I make sure that we keep it going. Social media is a tool. So if it goes down, make sure that you have a plan in place. And I know text messaging is really popular right now. I think that is something that I would think that that's something that you own, like people's phone numbers. So those are the tips that I have to make sure that you don't fall on your face when you're starting a business. So just to do a recap, tip number 1 is you want to get your house in order. Tip number 2 is unplug to do the work. Tip number 3 is find a mentor in your community, overall your support system. Tip number 4 is don't obsess over the numbers. Number 5, measure your performance. And lastly, focus on what you own. Thank you so much for listening to the Black to Business podcast. And I will put all the resources that I mentioned in the show notes, and you can check those out by visiting blacktobusiness.com/143. Also, I want to remind you that our business center is now open, where we help you form your LLC or corporation if you need to file a DBA, if you need to open a business, close a business, and lastly, if you need to write a business plan, we will handle those things for you. So check those out at blacktobusiness.com/business center. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to rate and review, and also download and subscribe to our podcast over at Apple or Spotify. Chat with you next week, same time, same place.